This pilot is at the controls of the world's most successful VSTOL combat aircraft. He's number 2 in a paired formation of Royal Air Force Harrier Mark 7s, about to launch on a mission from a frontline RAF airbase. It's a sobering thought that if, 30 years ago, the then Chiefs of Staff had had their way, neither he nor his aircraft would be here. In the 1960s, the RAF wanted the Harrier to be a supersonic interceptor, not a dirt bomber. But in 1965, the supersonic P-1154 was terminated by defence cuts, and the government ordered the subsonic P-1127 RAF, also to be called Harrier. Doubts expressed by the Royal Air Force quickly evaporated as they came to appreciate the fighting qualities of the Hawker Aircraft Company's original design. Today, 30 years on, the Harrier still heads the RAF's ground attack force. One squadron pilots, based at RAF Wittering as part of the Harrier force, plan a mission in which they'll use the latest laser-guided weapons and target-seeking devices, a tiled exercise. Routes, waypoints, weapon loads and fuel states are carefully planned and prepared for loading into the Harrier's tactical computer. Nothing is left to chance.
Which won't be updated once we enter the data because that's too hard to see. You just put it near that joint information, so isn't there?
Yeah.
Yeah, excuse me, Steve.
Move your left hand pad. Oh, actually, I think because, well, what are we doing? So Phil Spencer back up.
So is what is it, target 3?
Yeah, target 3.
Dunsfold, the British aerospace production line of Harriers. 7 military air arms fly this VSTOL aircraft worldwide. But what is VSTOL? How does it work? John Farley test flew the Harrier for many years.
The marvellous idea at the very beginning was to have these 4 nozzles, 2 on each side, these 4 nozzles, which could be rotated by the pilot. And in the cockpit you have a single lever alongside the throttle. With that lever forward, these 4 nozzles all point straight out the back of the aeroplane. If you bring the lever back, shall we say about 1.5 inches, they will be at that angle, an intermediate angle. If I continue to bring that lever back in the cockpit, then the nozzles will just rotate down. If you move the lever all the way down, then the nozzles will point at the ground. And so clearly, with the engine thrust being directed downwards, if you just place the throttle fully forward, the engine will spin up and the aeroplane will come up off the ground and you've done your first vertical takeoff. Now I ask you, what could be easier? Okay, so we've got the nozzles down, we've opened the throttle, we've left the ground. I'm afraid you've now got something else to do. You've got to keep this aeroplane flat. Now when you move the stick to the left, that aileron will go up and this one will go down. And if you pull the stick back, then of course the tailplane will change. And that's how you're going to control your attitude, normally, but we're in the hover. And of course, waving those aerodynamic surfaces around is going to do no good at all because there's no wind going over them. So what are we going to do? Well, the answer is that we have some reaction controls. Now, from the bottom of the engine is tapped air. It's high pressure air, it's nearly 10 atmospheres of pressure, and there's a pipe goes out to each wingtip, one to the nose and one to the tail. If I were to put the stick over to the right, this aileron would go up. In the hover, this valve, when that aileron comes up, this valve opens. And because the aileron has gone up, meaning we want this wing down, this valve opens and lets hot air squirt upwards and blows the wing down. Now we've got the same sort of thing at the tail. Let me show you how, if I move that rudder over towards the right, towards you, then this reaction control valve here will open slightly. I'll move it now. Can you see it? Can you see it going? Okay, well, we've only got one thing left now then, and that's the pitch. How are we going to control this aeroplane in pitch? For example, we've all seen Harriers at air shows do bows. Well, the pilot needs to lower the nose to do his bow, which is raising the tail. Now, we need something blowing out under here in order to raise the tail when we move the stick forward, and that is indeed what we've got.
This concept is as effective today as it was for the first VSTOL research jet built by Hawkers more than a third of a century ago. The Hawker P1127 prototype XP831 was built in 1960. The first engine run tests were hazardous affairs. The Bristol Pegasus II lift engine set fire to the protective blast shields.
We'd done some flying on helicopters. We'd flown a variable stability helicopter to understand what these numbers like radians per second squared per inch of stick meant. That's control sensitivity. And we'd also done a little bit of hovering on the short SC-1, which had 4 lift engines, separate propulsive engine to get a feel for jet reaction controls. So it was with that background that we started the tethered hovering. You don't require any courage to do tethered hovering. You're controlled from going out of control by the tethers themselves.
But things didn't always go smoothly.
We had phenomenal numbers of problems. I mean, in terms of getting the correct control powers, getting the correct feel, getting the correct sensitivity, getting the right gearing from the throttle to the engine, all these things had to be resolved. Then when we started taxiing and going for conventional flight, we found that when putting the brakes on, triggered the natural frequency of the undercarriage and snapped it off like a carrot. We also had occasion to have very severe outrigger shimmy during a high-speed taxiing, and a lot of aerodynamic problems that were affected by the jet efflux blowing underneath the wings and onto the tailplane.
Kestrel was the name chosen for the 9 P1127s which made up the tripartite evaluation squadron formed in 1964. The Royal Air Force, the Luftwaffe, and the United States Army, Navy, and Air Force all contributed pilots to this NATO-backed program. Based at West Raynham in Norfolk, their task was to evaluate the Kestrel in a series of dispersed trials. Kestrel FGA Mark I had many new features, including a forward-facing camera in the nose. It had an entirely new wing, with a single weapon pylon each side. Power came from a Bristol Siddeley Pegasus 5 vectored thrust turbofan, derated 15,500 pounds of static thrust, giving the Kestrel 4,500 pounds more thrust than the prototype P1127. Mobile emergency and air traffic control backup was provided during simulated off-base operations. Low-level attacks were carried out over disused wartime airfields. and the Kestrel could quickly hide itself away under trees. The Harrier Force pilots don their G-suits before the next step, their tactical briefing. They are about to combine the aircraft's extraordinary VSTOL capabilities with the most advanced precision-guided weapons in service today.
2, 1, 23. Right, we're Jedi, we're working with 08 Bravo 58 is the single Jaguar. The aim is to go and practice some T-out ops, simulating medium level. Davey Slow, Arnie P and Andy Mack, aircraft as shown. They've got 2 Seablers on. Andy Mack, you've only got 1 Seabler, mate, with only 4 bombs on it. The rest of us have got 8. Stow speeds there for auto flap, and hovering wise, not a lot on the dry side of things, but about 25 wet's the worst case if you come back to the pad.
The forerunners of the Harrier Force of the 90s, pilots of one squadron operating their Harrier GR Mark 1s from dispersed sites in 1970. RAF Wittering in West Germany was home to 3, 4 and 20 squadrons in the 70s. They would have been the first line of defence if the Soviet Union had launched an armoured assault from East Germany. UK-based 1 squadron flew its Mark I Harriers overseas for the first time in 1970, operating from RAF Akrotiri in Cyprus. The rugged Cypriot terrain provided an ideal training area for live firing trials with their twin Aden 30mm cannon and SNEB rocket launchers. Despite its earlier misgivings, the RAF was now fully converted to the ground attack Harrier cause and wasted no time in proving its lethality. The Mark I had 4 underwing hardpoints and a centerline station for a variety of weapons. Soft-skinned vehicles were wide open to abuse from the Harrier's SNEB rockets. Although there had been an obvious need for a 2-seat trainer version from the beginning, directional stability problems meant the elongated Harrier T Mark II wasn't cleared for service life until mid-1971. Once in service in sufficient numbers, the accident rate in pilot training was considerably reduced. Favorite tactic to launch a fully armed Harrier in the field is the rolling vertical takeoff. Speed is set to 90 knots and the engine nozzle angle to 60 degrees. The pilot presets this angle by means of a stop. The nozzle lever itself is kept fully forward. All checks complete, full power. At 90 knots, nozzle lever back to the stop. The engine nozzle rotates and the Harrier lifts off. Now the nozzle lever is moved slowly forward, rotating the nozzles to the horizontal position and accelerating the Harrier into wing-borne flight. A GR Mark I of No. 1 Squadron outbound on a tactical photo reconnaissance mission somewhere over West Germany. The target is captured in sharp detail by the aircraft's camera pod fitted to its centerline station. Now, a swift dash back to its hide to unload its precious film. Ground crew unload the 5 cameras contained in the pod. The film is dispatched to a mobile photo intelligence unit.
to my main target. You can just see my main target, but it looks as though the main armor...
And within
has moved to
minutes,
this
the
area
photographs
here.
are being used to brief pilots on the target location. Within an hour of the targets first being caught on film, a two-ship of Harriers from No. 1 Squadron is routing out low level towards them. The effect of their Sneb rockets and BL-755 cluster bombs is devastating. At Wittering, the four-ship briefing continues.
We're running at his height, so we go for the IP. He's going to jink off, I think, about 40 to 50 degrees to the left. We'll run in and we'll climb up 1,000 feet, which will put him 1,000 feet below us, but we'll have to climb 1,000 feet to achieve it. He's going to keep at his height. All he's in is basically going to do a delaying turn to make certain he gets behind us. We'll make certain we're 450 minimum ground speed there to help him get behind us. He'll call happy again when he's got it, marking. We'll do good tango. He might call another happy if he's wants to boost the confidence. 10 seconds, store away and splash. On this one, as we turn, we want to come 90 off. He should still be some way behind us and lower than us. So as we come off target, make certain you have a good look down to the left for whatever reason, and if need be, just climb it slightly higher, because we're going to have our flight paths will actually cross there. Because he'll need to carry on designating it, so effectively he'll probably truck up to north as we come around onto about 330. So he should go under us.
Their out-briefing completed, the pilots head for their waiting Harriers. The United States Marine Corps needed no persuading that VSTOL close air support was vital for protection during opposed amphibious landings. And with no American-built alternative available, the Harrier was the obvious solution. Designated AV-8A in the Marines, the Harrier acquired an air-to-air combat role for the first time, armed with AIM-9E Sidewinder missiles. Also, for the first time, the Harrier was operated at sea, launching from the decks of Marine Corps assault ships. No other fixed-wing aircraft type could rival the AV-8A's ability to deploy ashore and operate alongside troops in the combat zone, giving almost instantaneous response to the changing land battle. The US Marines developed the Harrier's extraordinary dogfighting ability, utilizing the Pegasus engine's four-nozzled vectored thrust. They called it VIF, thrust vectoring in forward flight. The AV-8A was similar in nearly all respects to the RAF's Harrier GR Mark 1As. 110 were bought from Hawker Siddeley. By 1974, the Marine Corps had 4 squadrons of AV-8As operational. The AV-8A uses the same 30mm Aden cannon as the RAF Harrier, retained because of its reliability. Practice bombs are bolted on. Conventional takeoffs are normal operating procedure for Marine Corps AV-8As when flying from their home air stations. For accurate navigation and weapon delivery, both the AV-8A and Harrier Mark 1A are fitted with the Ferranti FE 541 inertial navigation and attack system with its moving map display. A head-up display provides flight parameter, navigation, and weapon aiming data. And should an enemy aircraft be caught within Sidewinder air-to-air missile range, This is likely to be the result. Marine Corps Aviate-As were purchased outright from Hawker Siddeley, but the second generation Harrier, the Harrier II, was developed entirely by the American McDonnell Douglas Corporation. In 1975, the British government had withdrawn all funding for further Harrier development.
We had great funding restraints on the changes we could make between the early RAF Harriers and the Sea Harriers. But McDonnell Douglas very sensibly put a really good office, the one I'm sitting in now, and we've got this bubble canopy with wonderful visibility.
McDonnell Douglas now joined forces with the US Marine Corps to produce the Aviate-B, essentially a new aircraft with a bigger and stronger wing made of carbon fibre and a vastly improved cockpit layout. In the cockpit, McDonnell Douglas provided greater efficiency for the pilot by installing an integrated digital computer-controlled navigation and attack system, which included the Hughes angle rate bombing set, with dual-mode laser and TV tracker for day and night operations, an inertial navigation system, head-up and multi-purpose displays, plus a moving map element and a stores management set. Of course, the most obvious improvement was the bigger wing.
There are two types of Harrier Wing that have flown and have gone into service. One, a 200 square foot area metal wing, and the other a 230 square foot plastic wing. This wing was made by McDonnell Douglas, and it represents the very latest in technology in terms of strong structures and light structures. If you think of the way they make Formula One motor cars these days, you know, these carbon fibre, graphite epoxy resins are used all the time for their strength instead of metals. Firstly, and very obviously, the plastic wing has got these much larger flaps, and they help you lift off the much greater bomb load that the larger wing can carry. The bomb load, you see, isn't just a case of weight, it's the number of munitions you've got. And so this wing here has got 4 pylons on each wing. So it's 8 wing-borne pylons, as well as the 3 on the fuselage. Whereas the Harrier 1 wing has only got 2 pylons per wing. And so you've got only a total of 4 pylons on your wings on the Harrier 1. They also asked us to make the airplane so as it would fly from narrower roads. Well, the wheels that are on the wingtip, you know, they're over 20 feet apart. And you can hardly wander along a road with your main wheels on the road and your little kiddie wheels in the ditch, can you? You know, you don't mind having your outriggers on the road and your wing tips over the ditch. That's all right. So we move the outriggers in. Just as simple as that.
The first export customer for the Harrier II was the Spanish Navy, which operates 12 Aviate-Bs from its new aircraft carrier with a 12-degree bow ramp, the Príncipe de Asturias. The Aviate-B is known as the VA-2 Matador in the Spanish Navy, but the principle of landing vertically on the deck of an aircraft carrier at sea was first established as far back as 1966, when test pilot Bill Bedford conducted the first VSTOL trials at sea, flying a Kestrel development aircraft from the Royal Navy's helicopter carrier HMS Bulwark. The ease with which a VSTOL combat aircraft could land and take off was graphically illustrated. The Admiralty saw VSTOL as a threat to their established method of launching and recovering aircraft at sea with steam catapults and arrestor gear. They had also been told by the government to accept the supersonic P-1154 as a VSTOL replacement for the Sea Vixen fighter. They had wanted the F-4 Phantom. They were not sorry to see the 1154 sinking out of sight in the early 1960s, and with it, they believed, VSTOL at sea. It seemed unlikely that a naval version of the Harrier would ever rise. But the Harrier sea trials did occur again, with launches from the angled deck of HMS Eagle in 1970 by 2 Harrier Mark 1s, one from the Air Force, one from Hawker Siddeley, as well as descents onto the stern-mounted helicopter decks of fleet auxiliaries. Then a Navy skiing expert, Lieutenant Commander Doug Taylor, came up with a brilliant idea.
Doug Taylor came along and he said, what we want is a ski jump, this curved ramp on the front. If we put a curved ramp there such that the exit angle from that ramp, no matter how bow down the ship is still upwards, you're going away from the water. Isn't that what every pilot's trying to do? And I mean, it's such a simple idea. It was August 1977 when we had the first trial ski jump built for us at the Royal Aircraft Establishment at Bedford. It produced not only this better performance in terms of the weight you could lift in rough water, and it was rough down at the Falklands at times, but it also provided more safety for the pilot.
Ski jump and the new Sea Harrier really came into their own during the Falklands conflict of 1982. The Royal Navy's oldest carrier, HMS Hermes, was fitted with a 7-degree bow ramp when it sailed with the task force to the South Atlantic. Armed with AIM 9L Sidewinder missiles, Sea Harrier FRS Mark Is launched from the ski jumps of HMS Hermes and the task force commander's flagship, the newly commissioned HMS Invincible. They had to provide air defense of the fleet, round-the-clock protection of the task force against the threat of Argentine air attack. "20 Sea Harriers accompanied the task force, 12 operating from Hermes and 8 from Invincible. They were later reinforced by 8 more. Argentine Air Force and Navy Skyhawks were part of the main threat to the British fleet, now anchored in San Carlos water. They took a heavy toll. Dassault Mirage 3s and ex-Israeli Air Force Dagger fighters were the main air combat threat facing the Harriers. But they faced the combined firepower of the Sea Harrier's Sidewinders and the ground-based Rapier anti-aircraft missiles, which together successfully destroyed many Argentine attackers. The Sea Harrier also played its part in the low-level strike role as the campaign to retake the Falklands began. An RAF Vulcan led the way on May the 1st, flying all the way from Ascension Island to bomb the runway at Port Stanley's airfield. Following that, 12 Sea Harriers from 800 Naval Air Squadron launched a dawn attack from Hermes to drop 1,000-pound free-fall bombs on their target. Later in the campaign, RAF Harrier Mark IIIs arrived to take over the ground attack role, striking targets at Darwin and Goose Green before using their cluster bombs and Sneb rockets in support of the assault against Port Stanley. The Harrier Mark III became the definitive first-generation Harrier in Royal Air Force service. It differed mainly from the Mark 1A by having a 21,500-pound static thrust Rolls-Royce Pegasus 11 engine, an increase of 1,000 pounds of thrust over the 1A's Pegasus 10. Armament remained the same. Mark IIIs began to replace Mark 1As in British and German-based squadrons from 1976 onwards, by means of new-build aircraft as well as conversions of earlier Marks. But it's this distinctive nose job which really identifies the GR Mark III. It contains the Laser Ranger and Mark Target Seeker, which pulses infrared energy at a target. This energy is then reflected back and collected by the Seeker to generate steering signals in the pilot's head-up display. But although successful in the Falklands, the GR3's limitations in range and weapon load were now only too evident. What was needed was a bigger Harrier. Enter the Harrier GR Mark V. The RAF GR5 employs the same large area carbon fibre wing and the same engine, the Pegasus 11-21, as the Marine Corps AV-8B. The pilot enjoys the same bubble canopy with excellent all-round vision. A dogfighting capability is built into the Harrier GR5, and its in-flight refuelling probe is fully retractable. In March 1988, the Royal Air Force flew its first sortie in the Mark V, and 18 months later declared No. 1 Squadron operational on the type. Off-base dispersal sites are used in the same way as for earlier generations of Harriers. In war, the Harrier GR5 would fulfill a battlefield air interdiction role, attacking targets deep behind the enemy's front line. One of its principal weapons would be the hunting BL-755 cluster bomb, releasing hundreds of deadly bomblets. In a typical configuration of 7 BL-755s and 2 Sidewinders, the Harrier GR5 can still get airborne in less than 350 meters. The GR5 is the British version of the second-generation Harrier. Its manufacturer, British Aerospace, of which Hawker Siddeley originally formed a part, had become a partner in the Harrier program once more, 6 years after funding had been withdrawn. Effectively, the GR5 has a multi-role capability with its range greatly extended by use of the retractable refueling probe.
Any air threat at all?
Air threat, no, we're out of the Fez.
RAF Harrier GR5s begin their annual deployment to Bardufoss in Norway for Arctic warfare training. The harsh Norwegian landscape only serves to prove the Harrier's superb adaptability under extreme conditions. This Harrier GR5 had a special task in 1989, air testing the most powerful version of the Pegasus engine yet developed, the 1161. With 23,800 pounds of thrust, the aircraft set a series of time-to-height records. The next step was to create a night attack Harrier, with a GEC Sensors forward-looking infrared navigation system mounted above the nose and linked to a wide-angle Smiths Industries head-up display. This gave the Harrier II pilot superb visibility when flying at low level at night. Note the dancing butterfly-like markers on the head-up screen. They're thermal queuing indicators, TCIs, highlighting hotspots. The aircraft's attitude indicator is in the center of the screen, aligned with the horizon. The Fleur system was first developed for the Marine Corps Night Attack AV-8B. From 1990 onwards, all the RAF Harriers began to receive the same system, creating the Harrier Mark 7. Harrier GR7s of the RAF's Harrier Force undergoing maintenance at RAF Larbruck in today's unified Germany. All 96 single-seat second-generation RAF Harriers have now been converted or built to the night attack standard. Computerized visual display units are among the latest aids used for planning a mission. This pilot is selecting the weapon load for his Harrier. Until 1993, these Harrier Force pilots of the two Larbruck squadrons, numbers 3 and 4, had practiced these pre-flight routines in peacetime only. But from April 1993 onwards, they were doing it for real. Operating from Incirlik Air Base in Turkey as part of Operation Warden, their task was to protect Kurdish refugees from Iraqi aggression. Their GR7s flew many reconnaissance missions over northern Iraq, often facing the very real threat of being fired on by Iraqi surface-to-air missiles. In August 1995, No. 4 Squadron was in action again, deploying 12 GR7s to Gioia della Colle in Italy. 1 month later, they were flying battlefield air interdiction missions against the Bosnian Serbs as part of NATO's Operation Deliberate Force. Harriers of 4 Squadron were tasked with destroying air defense radar installations and ammunition storage depots, carrying Paveway 2 laser-guided bombs. The first time RAF Harriers had used precision-guided weapons in combat. In-flight refueling was provided by VC-10 tankers. Hooking up to the tanker calls for precise flying.
Madras 23, do you have an estimate of how much available for bootleg?
Stand by, Madras 23. £15,000, Madras 23.
Sorry, say again?
£15,000, Madras 23.
Roger.
Disconnect. Disconnect.
Having refueled, the Harriers drop away on their mission, firing decoy flares in salute. During Operation Deliberate Force, they dropped 48 laser-guided bombs, destroying 85% of their targets. Although not called upon to fly air-to-air combat sorties over Bosnia, the GR-7 does possess a powerful dogfighting capability, utilizing the AIM 911 Sidewinder. This is a GR-7 pilot taking out a target drone with a Sidewinder over a firing range.
Flares now. Flares lit. 1,000 yards. 4,500.
Firing. Firing. Now. Slow away. Flash observed.
The all-important walk-round check before the pilot straps in and begins loading his tactical computer. Sea Harrier has also undergone a major metamorphosis. Now classified as Sea Harrier FA Mark II, it has a completely redesigned nose housing the GEC Marconi Blue Vixen multimode pulse Doppler air interception radar, which gives the FA-2 the ability to engage targets far beyond the pilot's visual range. Linked to the Hughes AIM-120 Advanced Medium-Range Air-to-Air Missile, this formidable combination of Blue Vixen and AMRAAM has led the commander of the Royal Navy's Fleet Air Arm to claim that the Sea Harrier FA-2 is the best air defence fighter in Europe. Meanwhile, McDonnell Douglas and British Aerospace have jointly developed the Harrier 2 Plus, equipped with night attack radar. But this Harrier truly represents the future. Called VARC Harrier, it's being used by the Defence Evaluation and Research Agency at Boscombe Down Flight Test Centre to research the most sophisticated flight control system yet applied to VSTOL combat aircraft. Ironically, this Harrier is the oldest of its breed flying today, the second prototype two-seater which first flew in 1969.
VARC Harrier stands for VSTOL Aircraft Advanced Control, and we're looking at a range of advanced control techniques for the next generation of VSTOL aircraft. Active control technology is another word or another expression you might have heard for a related field is fly-by-wire. It's basically the use of advanced computer techniques to fly the aeroplane for you in response to pilot inputs to the normal controls. The computer is quite transparent to the pilot. The pilot feels like he's flying an aircraft that, if you design your computer control laws well, flies very well. But the computer is actually manipulating the control surfaces for you, actively controlling the aircraft in response to pilot inputs to the controls. In the VARC Harrier, we've actually demonstrated more than one different control strategy, but one of them we've demonstrated includes the use of just a single control, where the center stick controls all flight path parameters, such as your rate of climb, descent, and bank in either direction. And a little thumb wheel mounted on the top of that control controls your speed demand, whether you want to go faster or slower, therefore replacing the throttle. At a current Harrier conversion unit, where you come through from training on Hawk aircraft in this country and fly the Harrier for the first time, about the first 18 sorties and a good deal of groundwork is spent learning to fly VSTOL, which is something completely new to you and completely unique, obviously, to the Harrier or a VSTOL aircraft. If we could make the aircraft fly the same at 5 knots as it flies at 500 knots, you would only need to take your conventionally trained pilot and ask him to slow down until he's stationary in the air. That's the sort of, if you like, a very simple way of phrasing our ultimate goal, is to make this aircraft fly the same way, whether it's in the hover or it's flying along at 500 miles an hour. You can then reduce that whole extra training burden of essentially VSTOL training and cut it out of the syllabus altogether with associated savings.
VARC research forms part of Britain's contribution to the Joint Strike Fighter programme, leading to replacement of the Marine Corps AV-8B and the Royal Navy Sea Harrier in the 21st century. Despite an intensive workload both here in the United Kingdom and on deployment abroad, the Harrier Force ground crew and pilots find time to stage a mock attack in front of a crowd of 200,000 people as the finale to the 1996 International Air Tattoo. Taking part were pilots from all 4 Harrier squadrons, demonstrating both the GR7 and the 2-seat T-10 trainer. And the only slight hiccup was minor bird strike damage to one aircraft. As these 4 pilots prepare for a 4-ship practice bombing sortie over the Wash, this pilot prepares for a 2-ship sortie, routing low level from RAF Wittering to Scotland for another separate practice bombing mission.
Get rid of the cabin control, make a lot quieter in here.
Pylons out in the left, 10 o'clock, spotted India now. I think that's the mast over in the 1 o'clock. Now the arrow's pointing me to the actual start point. And confirm that on the map. Right, nothing on the right hand side out there. The sun is not going to be pleasant. Okay, nice into the first start point. I'm stepping up to the next point now. I'm going to designate that. And here we are in Loch Ness. Let's get rid of that for the moment. Right. A little bit quick at the moment. Let's just slow it down. Just checking in the 6 for any bounces that might be coming in. So bring it over the left hand side. Just for a bit of look. All clear down there and reversing. Okay, pulling 3.94G now. And let's avoid Port Augustus. Coming around. Don't want to rot the locals off, that's for sure. Right, 450 knots. Pylons over through there. Clear of those. And let's go down. A little bit fast. Pylons on the right hand side. Okay, that's a bingo fuel. I've got 5,000 for first check fuel. Let's go down into the side of the lake slightly. Keeping on the wood line. And nicely down in the woods down here. Okay, next one on straight on, a bit of a round the corner. And round. Little 3G squeeze. Way behind. Right, for ultra low flying now, we've been down at 100 feet. And we're cleared at 250. Okay, so follow the line round. I've got the pylons out on the right hand side. Some bad weather coming up ahead. I'm doing 8 miles a minute nearly. Tends to creep up fairly quickly. Have to keep a good look on that one. And coming left. Okay, squeezing 4G round the corner. And rolling out. Speed a bit high. Nice valley off to the right there. Looking pretty clear. Okay, the weather's looking a little bit iffy on there. However, nice little pocket to go through. Look at the weather up there. It's not looking too bad. Whereas this side is looking fine. Stick it round. Still nothing in the 6. And around the corner. Lots of buffet coming on. 4.8G. I think we'll aim down the right hand side of this valley. As a pilot, you hate being unsighted with your belly as you go around the old turns. Without a doubt, it's not the most pleasant of feelings. Not overly tactical going over the water like this. This is where I should be. If you're actually sat here on the wood line, very difficult to spot from upstairs by a fighter. Perhaps just a little diversion over here, just to show you this. Because if I do this, and then bring it up, and that, Hopefully that'll look nice. Jeebus. Right, 3,000. I'm just there now. Powering back. Come back for 420. Right, you can see on the G meter there, the max G we pulled was 5.
The G meter is down on the left-hand side.
I'll go due east.
About to commence the first of his practice bombing runs, note the height reading, top right on the HUD display.
In hot target 5.
3 clear hot.
One base. Two in hot target 5.
Roger, clear hot.
Two off right. Three switches safe. Three switches safe. Leaving IP, abort code Alpha Alpha. Alpha Alpha copied. Target, soft skin vehicle. Soft skin vehicle lies between two light coloured aeroplanes. On your attack heading, one aeroplane will be 20 metres short and 1 metre, second aeroplane 20 metres long. 18, roger. Target lies in low ground. There's a ridge line that runs along the right-hand side of the target. You need to be on the left-hand side of the ridge line. Right, 1.5 miles out looking. 12 o'clock, 1K. Visual. Right. Target. Four in hot, target 6.
4 clear hot.
Hot 4.
2 aircraft transmitting together.
2 downwind.
Now, watch the approach to this target.
One base. Four off drive. Dickhead. 3 downwind.
We die, target 5. You complete plonker. You complete and utter dickhead. Too high, not good pass. Oh well.
Proving perhaps that even Harrier pilots have off days, just like the rest of us.
The Harrier, in its many variations, is one of Britain's most successful exports, now developed by McDonnell Douglas of America. This is the T-10 trainer version flying into Fairford from its base at RAF Wittering. Most fast jet pilots train in their early 20s, but not quite all. The Follow Me van provides a clue. In fact, David Jason has done a bit of flying in his time, mostly on gliders.
It's easy, flies itself, really. I didn't really need him, you know what I mean?
This, of course, was a bit of fun for the press, though on this special anniversary for the aircraft, most of the Harrier top brass were here.
Bill Bedford, his name must be familiar to you.
And you, sir.
I had the misfortune to do the first flight 100 years ago.
Did you really?
So why you should stick your neck in it, I can't possibly know.
The star of many TV series, Jason had clearly enjoyed his flight.
I think the most complicated part of it all really was the kitting up and the briefing, because you've got to be briefed about, emergency procedures and all the paraphernalia in the cockpit. But you've got to get this all this kit on. I mean, it looks pretty professional. I mean, I think I might wear it all the time.
And he did get a chance to fly the aircraft.
I was very fortunate that he had enough confidence in me to allow me to fly it, to take control. And that's when it really gets exciting. I mean, when you feel that machine respond and it's in your hands, there is also a slight fear factor, if that's the right word. Meaning, your response. If you did something really stupid, I mean, that would be the end of it. So there's a bit of adrenaline flowing. It's exciting, yeah, lovely.
And the inevitable question, what would Dell have done with a Harrier?
Well, he wouldn't have got out of it, would he? He would have probably flown it to some third world country and flogged it.
It's the only way to travel.
For only half of what it's really worth.
That is one hell of a machine.
And so to the finale. It's a singular thought that in this year when we're celebrating 60 years of the Spitfire, we're actually celebrating no less than 30 years of the Harrier and all the vertical takeoff flight concepts that it includes. There were aircraft from all four of the RAF's Harrier squadrons involved in this whole demonstration. Say number 1 Fighter Squadron and number 20 Reserve Squadron from Wittering, and number 3 Fighter and 4 Army Cooperation Squadron from Larbrook. Here's the pilot's eye view of an attack building up. The head-up instrumentation giving the pilot all he needs to know without having to take his eyes off the target. The target in this case being an operations centre in a rebel-held village right in the middle of the airfield. The 10 aircraft attack from different directions, which is quite realistic. They would make their run-ins from as many different directions as they could. They come by in 2 sections of 4 from each direction. And then when the final attack has been made, there's a short gap. And then 2 reconnaissance aircraft fly through to assess the damage to the target. But in fact, in the middle of the demonstration, there's a slight problem. One of the aircraft, in this case it's actually a 2-seat T-10 aircraft, one of the trainer aircraft, has hit a bird. Now, we don't think there's serious damage, but it was serious enough for the pilot to decide that he had to come in and have the thing looked at. In the meantime, though, the Rebel Operations Centre has been destroyed and the troops are called in, and Hercules aircraft come in on a tactical air landing operation. We'll see the aircraft go into reverse pitch, stop very quickly, the ramps come down, and out come the troops in their Scimitar light tanks and a Land Rover with a general purpose machine gun on it. That's for mopping up the bits of the rebel operation that the Harriers couldn't manage to do. And within less than a minute, the Hercules is off again, not staying on the ground any longer than he absolutely has to. Meanwhile, the engineers are getting a look at this T-10 Harrier that's had the bird strike. Seems to have hit it on the intake on the right-hand side. I'm not sure whether it's gone into the engine, but probably it hasn't from the look of where the dent is. And there doesn't appear to be too much serious damage, except, of course, to the bird.